This is DDL 146. This week we talk about the Chinese Grand Prix and we have more information on our training for walking up Snowdon.
I hear pod
The Australian Grand Prix, I only listened to the Radio 5 live coverage of, which was fairly limited. It's the first time I've actually just listened to Formula One. Normally I've at least watched the highlights, and I didn't find the experience that fantastic. You did the same, didn't you? You just listened to...
What, the Australian?
Yeah.
I didn't actually listen or read. I read about it. I didn't listen or watch or anything.
Because it was a 45-minute radio show that was supposed to have like 30 minutes of Formula One race and sort of 15 minutes of either side introduction and notes afterwards. And it was all a bit weird. Granted, saying this on an audio podcast...
But it's quite difficult. I mean, I've listened to football matches on 5 Live, and I suspect it's something very similar because it's such a visual thing. A football match or a motor race is a very visual thing. So they're describing that this car's coming down this track and he pulls out for an overtake with a bit of late braking or whatever. It just doesn't have that surely the same impact as physically watching them do it.
And the more exciting the overtaking or the situation is, the more excited the presenter is, and the less he's making sense that. And the amount of times that we've watched Formula One and corrected the announcers when they've said that such and such a driver has just pulled out of the pits in front. It's like, no, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't. That's his
teammate.
teammate.
That's definitely his teammate. And then afterwards they correct them and say, no, actually that wasn't him that came out. You're like, yep, told you. Which you can't do that with the
only
radio.
one I really listened to on the radio, I'd watched the first part of the race and I happened to... I needed to go out somewhere at the time and I listened to it on the radio, was the race where Ayrton Senna died.
Oh, blimey.
And I saw the crash and then I just had to go somewhere. And I'm driving up the road listening to it and they're saying it's not looking good, and it's like, oh Jesus, you knew he died, basically. And that was the only one that I can really remember having sort of listened to.
Well, what with the races being on pay-per-view nowadays and not easily accessible, the one which just happened last weekend, the Chinese Grand Prix, I watched the highlights only on Channel 4, and I didn't realise that the chain goes with Formula One.
Do you know that I've got my little notes written down here from watching it, and right at the very top it says, "Great to see that they've kept the chain."
Yeah. Does the chain play on Sky? Do you know?
I don't know. It doesn't. It's not. I think it's something Channel 4 has carried on for nostalgia purposes. It's the one that used to be the theme music back when BBC was the only channel that broadcasted F1, and they did it from the 80s, late 70s, and that sort of has become the theme for Formula One. When it moved to Channel 4, I said to Glenn at work, I said, this sad thing is that we're going to lose the chain again. Of course, played this thing yesterday, Tuesday, and there it is. There's the chain, and I was like, fantastic.
Yeah, I thought that the Channel 4 coverage had a much more BBC-like feel to it. I know that's a daft thing to say, but definitely having Coulthard on the.
I mean, to be fair, it hasn't really changed much at all. I do wonder if the production company that did the F1 coverage for the BBC just basically moved to Channel 4 because it basically seems like the same show to me with slightly different presenters, but the approach and the style seems very, very similar.
Yep. So you had the walk around the track to start with all the memories of various races and accidents and incidents on certain corners, and then sort of a bit of a chat with DC about what he thought, and then the grid walk, and then the race, which was pretty much the way the BBC used to do it, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think it just works. It's, it is a good way of doing it. I think with Sky, they tend to sort of try and overanalyze things, and they come up with all the data and the figures and the facts, and I've seen a couple of the ones on Skies from other seasons because my sister has it on, and they'll show them driving a practice lap, and they'll show all the G-force meters and how far they've got the brakes on and where they brake from, and they kind of go into too much detail for me.
Well, with all that sort of information, I thought that was generally provided by the television company that's hosting the Formula One.
Oh, yeah, it is, but they'll sort of replay it. Well, they're sort of hyping the race. They'll replay the stuff from the practice thing, and they'll have some expert standing there with his nice magic window, pointing at things and highlighting things, and it just doesn't do it for me. It's far too technical.
Yeah. It is a lot more technical than it used to be in the 70s, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you start talking about DRS and how and when it can be deployed, and perhaps you can fill me in on this. I don't know how new this is, but this was the first time that I've seen the virtual safety car. Yeah,
I've never seen it. I think they had it last year, but I've never sort of actually seen it with my own two eyes. What I don't know is how they...
how the drivers see it.
Yeah, and how
I suspect it's going to be a yellow light on... Well, you noticed the yellow lights were all around the track.
Yeah, but from what I can see on the steering wheels of the cars, they don't have a speedo on them, do they? So they don't know how fast they're going, or do they?
That's a good point.
Because they have to keep to a certain speed, don't they?
But but there's all sorts of things. They have to keep to a certain speed in the pit lane as well. So there must be.
Isn't that electronically controlled though?
It's still been broken in the past, which would suggest that it's overridable at least. I don't know. I'd be surprised if there's not a speedo. Why would there not be one?
I don't know. I've just
they're going to want as much information.
They've got the digital readout, but from what I've seen, obviously you can only see what you see on the TV. They obviously see it a lot closer than we do. But I've only ever seen like a rev counter and that kind of stuff. But I don't remember ever seeing a speedo.
Yeah, it's good. We'll have to check that out when the next race comes along. But with regards to sort of the virtual safety car itself, it's slightly different in that with the safety car, as the safety car comes out, those that are just in front of the safety car as it comes out have got an entire lap to come around and bunch up to the cars behind. If the safety car's only out for a lap, then they've caught up and they've got warmer tyres and a warmer vehicle.
I mean, they gain a massive advantage from it, don't they?
Yeah. With the virtual safety car, suddenly everybody is under a speed limit, and you've got the no overtaking rules in place. So it's a lot less likely to give anybody any kind of advantage when they're being held by the virtual safety car. And I think that the virtual safety car is designed for a quicker deployment and quicker cancelling, because it was only on for possibly half a lap. It wasn't running for very long.
No, it must be there for sort of like minor issues.
Yeah. Because
unlike when Giovinazzi absolutely destroyed his car on the start-finish straight, that called for the full safety car, because that's going to take a lot of time to sort out. Plus, again, I think like you were saying, with under the full safety car, the cars tend to bunch up, so they're all in sort of one really small space of the track, which gives the guys cleaning up the track a whole lap's worth of time. to actually do something. Whereas if they're all spread out under the virtual safety car, they'll be running out, getting a bit, and oh no, here comes another car. It wouldn't work, would it?
It would really depend on the situation. I mean, with Giovinazzi, he just completely strewed his car all over that start straight, and they had to divert through the pit lane, I believe.
Yeah, which is something I'd never seen before.
Again, yeah, I'd never heard of that. But had they not done that, it might have been a complete stop race had it been anywhere else on the track. Because if you can't get round it safely with bits of car and bits of carbon fibre all over the track, then that would have caused a big problem, and quite possibly would have been a... Well, how far into the race was that? That wasn't very far into the race. It might have even caused a restart.
It probably could have done, yeah. I don't know how long it was. It was only sort of 10 laps or so. Not even that long.
I'm not even sure it was that. Yeah, all those pages and pages of notes, and you don't tell us.
Wait, well, you asked me the question, and I'm stalling while I'm looking at my notes. If I'm being honest, lap 4. Well, it was lap 4. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, because
it was only just after the virtual safety car went in, wasn't it? It was almost the next lap.
Because Lance Stroll went out on the first lap, and
they had a couple of laps round with the virtual, and then that went in, and then it must have been a case of cold slick tyres going through the wet patch under the bridge.
He wasn't on slicks.
Was he on the intermediates?
Everybody was on intermediates apart from one person, and I didn't make a note on that.
It was Sainz,
and that one person ended up getting left at the start line when everybody took off, and he had no grip.
Yeah, it was Carlos Sainz was the only one that started on slicks.
Yeah,
but didn't a few of them go under the virtual safety car and change over? I think Vettel did.
It was about that time, yeah. But what happened was that, and this was, I think, what made the race interesting, was it had just stopped raining, and there was no more rain coming, and the track wasn't particularly warm, so it wasn't drying up very quickly. So the racing was what was drying the track up. But to overtake, you would have to go off the racing line onto the dirt and the wet. And it was all he who dares, possibly wins or possibly ends up just spinning the car off.
I tell you, right at the start, you're saying about going onto the wet track and sort of taking a risk. Verstappen started off in 16th on the grid, and within the first lap, he'd overtaken 9 people.
Yeah.
And he did sort of 6 of those just before he got to the first corner. He's a world champion in the making. I'm convinced
absolutely.
of it. Yeah. Absolutely convinced of it.
Because it's been a while since I've actually followed Formula One, it's really difficult for me to not say, Josh Verstappen.
Yeah.
Who is this Max fellow? And yeah, it was an interesting race. I enjoyed that race. It was a good race to watch.
I think that's one of the best races I've seen in a long time, actually. There's been races with good incidents and good talking points and that, but as an overall race that kept my interest, I think this is the first one in a long, long time.
Yeah, because the two cars sort of coming wheel to wheel and not taking each other out. Quite a few cars that pushed it a little bit too far, broke a little bit late, lost the racing line, but just recovered in time to keep going. It wasn't just a case of, lost the racing line and you're into the gravel and that's it. They were actually coming back in and back into the pace fairly quickly. And the Red Bulls in the second half of the race, really racing against each other, that was really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
One of the conversations we had before the season started, I was talking about the shark's fins on the back of the cars, and I wasn't sure about them. Having seen the race, having seen them on the move, rather than just the sort of static publicity shots, they look awesome.
Yeah.
I really like... I mean, the cars look so mean now, don't they?
They do.
I mean, how low they sit with the big fat tyres and that. They look like racing cars now. They look awesome.
And some of the shots that you see from behind when they do the slow motion shots of them overtaking, and you see sort of the whole. It's a monster. They're sort of low, squat, wide, and the tires are all bouncing in different directions. And yeah, I'm enjoying this series already, even though it's only the second one and this is the first one that I've watched. The couple of things that I noticed when you're watching the cars, the view from the driver's eye looking forward, there's quite a considerable difference between the cars now. The Ferraris have little fins coming horizontally just off of the top of the nose. Some of the cars, you can, from the driver's position, you can barely see the front fins at all.
Yeah.
And then others are quite obvious. And certainly the picture of the camera down by the Ferrari's front wing with all the slots through the front wing, it's really nice. I really like the look of it and the filming of it. It's really good. With regards to the finish, we didn't get to see Lewis Hamilton that much because once he was out there,
I like the fact that our notes tie up so well because, again, hardly saw Hamilton on screen.
Yeah.
But it's true, isn't it? You saw him at the start. You saw him for the first 2 or 3 laps where they were all nice and together. But they just concentrated on the 2 Red Bulls and Vettel and Raikkonen, the Ferraris, because they were the ones that looked like something was going to happen. Hamilton was just off and sort of cruising away. I don't think he ever got too far ahead, but far enough so he was out of shot for the other 3 cars. So
well, he was far enough ahead that he came in for a pit stop and went out again without losing position.
Yeah. But I think that was because all the others had already gone in, so that gap was sort of already built in for him.
Yeah.
The only one they were worried about was Raikkonen, wasn't it? And then he went in after. Hamilton came out just ahead of him, and then he went in for his tyres. So, that he had enough gap artificially to do it. But, you just didn't see him, which must really annoy the Mercedes sponsors. Because you kind of expect to be one of the top teams, you're going to get loads of airtime, and you didn't.
But the thing is, Lewis Hamilton himself is a bit of a rock star, really. So even when you're not seeing the brands on track, you certainly see it splashed all over the place. I follow Lewis Hamilton on Instagram, and you would think from some of the stuff that he posts that he's a wannabe. It's like, well, no, he's not really a wannabe. He actually is.
He is, yeah.
Boy racer. Probably, yeah.
It was nice to see the first 2 races. You have 2 different winners, and the fact that they basically swapped roles, didn't they? So you had Vettel and Hamilton in Australia, and now you've got Hamilton and Vettel. I really hope Ferrari managed to keep it up all season, and therefore it does go down to the wire a little bit more.
And it's also nice to have 3 at the beginning. So you've got McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull. It was nice that they were all up in the top. And if Red Bull can pull a couple out the bag, like you said, Verstappen he's got the stuff.
Absolutely. They just need to give him the car.
I missed the qualifying. I'm not sure why it was that he ended up so far down in qualification, do you know?
I think he had a car problem. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he had an issue and didn't get through Q2.
Yeah.
I mean, the Red Bull is slightly down on power. They've got the aero, but they're slightly down on power. So the longer, faster tracks they're going to struggle with. But the more twisty tracks, something like Monaco, they'll be fine at.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some of the larger, longer tracks, they're going to struggle to keep up. And Hamilton was saying when they were at the end of the race, they sort of had obviously the interview with him on track, and he was saying that the Ferraris are stronger on the more twisty and warmer tracks because their tyres don't heat up quite so much as the Mercedes does. Oh. They're on the same tyres, but the cars sort of affect them different ways. And the Ferrari's tyres don't overheat very quickly, whereas the Mercedes have trouble keeping the temperature down. And also the Mercedes is a lot longer than the Ferrari. So on the twistier tracks like Monaco, Hamilton actually said, how the hell I'm going to get it round Monaco, I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Because, it's a very long car.
Turn.
Yeah. And some of those, some of the turns in Monaco, they're almost like 180 in a very tight turn. So he said, I'm not sure how I'm going to do it. So those sort of races, the Ferraris are going to have an advantage. But on the longer, more open tracks that are in cooler temperatures, then the Mercedes is going to have the edge. Places like he quoted Japan, Suzuka, that is going to be much more dominant there than he is, say, this week in Bahrain.
I think that Vettel was saying on the radio in the Chinese Grand Prix that he thought he was having tyre trouble, but it turned out to be not a problem with the tyres themselves, but the temperature of the tyres.
Yeah.
That kind of marries up to what you're saying there. If it was not a warm track, and the Ferrari doesn't warm the tyres up as much,
I think they have trouble getting heat into their tyres, whereas the Mercedes has the exact opposite problem.
Rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully throughout the season we're going to see that sort of seesaw a little bit. And keep the sort of variation going on the winner and the second place. And I'd love to see it come down to sort of the last 2 or 3 races of the season and it still be Hamilton and Vettel. You've got 2 world champions. They've got 7 world championships between them in 2 completely different teams. And given that Valtteri Bottas isn't doing the best of jobs, he's doing all right, don't get me wrong, but he's not as strong as Rosberg was.
Yeah.
So he's not finishing quite as high. It's entirely possible that Hamilton could win the World Championship, but Ferrari could win the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah.
Which I think personally would be the best result, because I'm a Hamilton fan, but I've got a soft spot for Ferrari. So I'd like to see Hamilton win it and Ferrari take the Constructors.
So how many weeks now have we got until we do Snowdon?
I believe it's 3.
3 more weeks, so 3 more practice weekends.
Yes.
I've done something every week. Oh no, maybe not every week. Well, last weekend I started my in earnest training by on Saturday doing my normal 6-mile walk. But doing it to a stopwatch, doing it non-stop, and choosing a route that I'm going to stick to. And when I do more training this weekend, I will again do that same route. And then on the Sunday, I did Box Hill steps. Now, Box Hill, because Surrey is not renowned for its mountainous landscapes, I think you've got a similar sort of problem up there, haven't you? There's not
pretty
really
much,
many mountains around there.
Yeah.
Box Hill is a local hill that has got a climb of about 128 metres. So I've went from the top to the bottom and back up again in about 20 minutes.
Right.
It gradually got slower and slower, but in about 20 minutes. And the climb from the Penny Pass car park up to the peak of Snowdon is, any idea?
714 metres.
Did I put that on the... I didn't put that on the notes.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I put that on the other thing, didn't I?
No, you put it on the notes.
Put it on the notes. Oh, spoiled that one.
Sorry.
714 metres from the... Because I think the car park itself is like 300 metres above sea level.
Yeah, something like that.
The peak is just over 1,000 metres above sea level. So for me, practicing on the 28 metre climb, I would have to do it about 6-7 times.
Did you do it more than once?
I did it 3 times.
Excellent. So you're halfway up.
Well, exactly. But 3 times in an hour and a half. And I didn't stop because I was tired. I kind of stopped because it was starting to get busy and because it was starting to get a bit late. I started a bit too late. What I should have done really is start early in the morning.
Which is exactly what I did.
Yeah, no, I started... Well, what time did you get back? Because I started after you got back, I think, didn't I?
Yeah, I left at 7:30 Saturday morning, and I did an 8-mile walk.
Yeah.
But like you said, it was a flat walk. There was no climbing at all. But I've effectively covered the distance that I need to cover.
Yeah.
And I wasn't rushing it. I stopped and shot a few videos and sort of had a look at a few things along the way. And I got back, I think I got back about 10. It's about 2.5 hours, something like that. But then I did go up to my local cafe and have a full English breakfast. I got home about 11 o'clock. Actually sort of walked back in the house, but I'd probably been in the cafe about 45 minutes then. So, about 2.5 hours for an 8-mile hike that I wasn't rushing, and I did stop quite a lot and take some photos and stuff. So I'm comfortable with that as a speed, and I'm comfortable with the stamina of being able to physically walk that distance. Now what I need to do is something similar to what you're doing there, and is work on the sort of upper thighs, to sort of be able to physically step.
Yeah. The problem with the steps that I've got at the Box Hill is that they are a step and a half.
Well, that's good though, isn't it? Because
it
if
means
you're
I end up
overworking
going down on one foot all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you're only working one thigh.
So you're leading with one foot, and then you have to consciously at one point stop and go down with the other foot. And then there's a couple of steps that are normal, and then you go down those and you think, oh, I'm back on the other foot again. And then you stop to let somebody come up with a dog, and you're like, but the Snowdon is actually one of the busiest mountains in the UK. So practicing doing the walk when it's busy is probably not a bad thing.
Bad idea, no. Well, this weekend, I've actually got tomorrow off, and I'm going to do a 12-mile hike.
Oh, wow.
I've got to get up to drop my housemate off to work because he hasn't got a car at the moment, so he needs to be at work for 7. So my plan is to drop him off, then drive down to the start of where I do my walk, and just go. And I shall go a little bit further than what I did on the weekend, and that'll be about a 12-mile hike, which is way more than what we're doing. So that's my plan, is just to sort of build up my stamina that way, because I don't have anywhere that's got hills or a bunch of steps like you've got, short of climbing up my house steps 200 times or something. I do have a weight bench with one of the leg pivot things that I might put some weights on there and sort of do some exercises on that to try and build the thigh muscles up. But I think I'm just going for the stamina thing and hope that sort of keeps me instead. But one of the good things about getting to the top of Snowdon is we will be presented with what has just been voted the greatest view in the UK.
Hopefully, as long as the weather is in our favour.
Which was my response on Twitter when somebody pointed it out to me. I said, the last time I went up, I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. So.
Voted by whom?
I don't know. Hold on.
I don't
do
ask you
that
these
to me.
questions.
Don't do that to me.
I don't think we've mentioned this, but we will be going up Snowdon with a third person. We've not mentioned this.
Yes, we will. No, we haven't, no.
It's Ken from Derby.
Ken from Derby, or Ken from Leicester, as he's now known.
Okay, well, yeah, we can't change his name.
or better known to you as Dad.
As Dad, yeah. So, and Dad's been doing walks, and I think Dad did a 12-mile walk Again, in Leicester, not particularly mountainous ranges in Leicester.
No, it'd probably be better off if he was still in Derby, to be fair.
Yeah. So he's practicing long distances. I haven't really done long distances. Other than sort of doing my 6 mile walk twice, which would be a bit boring. So I'm sort of doing a mixture of distance walk and then on the Sunday doing the climbs, the inclines. But yeah, I'm fairly confident that we'll be able to do this and that we'll be comfortable doing it.
I know I can do it.
Has that been long enough to find out?
Yes, it has, yeah. It's Samsung, believe it or not.
Samsung voted that it's the highest.
No, Samsung did the poll. I suspect
okay.
it's to do with the new Galaxy 8 that comes out, and they've got a brand new funky camera on there, so they did a view thing, did the voting for that. But reading the article, something that I found quite interesting, there's a huge lake at the bottom of Snowdon called Llyn Llador.
I'm glad you pronounced that.
I'm pretty sure I butchered it, but yeah. And apparently it's it's one of the inspirations for the lake where Arthur was given Excalibur from the Lady in the Lake.
One of the inspirations.
Or it's one of the... Because obviously King Arthur's story is a myth tied into fact, and nobody knows what bits of it are true and what bits of it are historical. The whole story of Arthur getting the sword from the Lady in the Lake, it's suspected that was one of the lakes, or contenders to be one of the lakes from where it happened, because a lot of the Arthur stories and Merlin and that is all tied up with Welsh history as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Merlin apparently was Welsh.
Aha.
So, yeah.
That would explain the dragon fighting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, the lake there is supposedly the Lady in the Lake.
So we have another Grand Prix coming up this coming weekend. We have more walking to do and more preparations to do for our climb up Snowdon. So we should have plenty to talk about again next week. Thank you for listening.
I hear podcast.